We have been discussing about the concept of becoming, and we will continue studying a little bit more on the concept of becoming before we start discussing about the Archė fire of Heraclitus's philosophy. This is Dr. Ananya Barua, Associate Professor in the Department of Philosophy, Hindu College. Now we will be trying to understand how is the concept of becoming of Heraclitus is connected with Indian philosophy. The concept of becoming has profound resonance with Indian philosophy, particularly Buddhism and Shunyavada, the doctrine of emptiness as expounded by Nagarjuna. While Heraclitus and early Buddhist thinkers like the Buddha or Nagarjuna never interacted, their views on change, impermanence, and identity show remarkable parallels, though with key differences as well. Number 1. Becoming in Indian philosophy. The central doctrine of Pratitya Samutpada, or the doctrine of dependent origination, states that imasimim sati idam hoti imasa upada idam upajati, which is, when this is that comes to be, with the arising of these that arises, which is a quote taken from Samyukta Nikaya 12.1. This Buddhist doctrine teaches that everything arises in dependence on conditions. Nothing exists independently or permanently. Reality is a continuous flow of interdependent becoming. There is no abiding self, anatta or anatma in Sanskrit. In Pali it is anatta. Only a flux of skandhas, aggregates. Thus, becoming is not merely a process of change. It is the fabric of existence, inseparable from causality and contingency. Nagarjuna, 2nd to 3rd century CE, in the Mula Madhyamikarika, radicalized the notion of dependent origination. Quote, whatever is dependently co-arisen, that is explained to be emptiness. For Nagarjuna, all things are empty of swabhava or inherent essence. They exist only in relation as becomings, not static beings. Emptiness or shunyata is not nihilism. It is the groundless ground of change. Now, if we look at this PPT here, we see the comparison with Heraclitus, some of the convergence and divergence. About theme on reality, Heraclitus talks of it as a constant flux. Buddhism or Shunyavada talks about reality as an interdependent arising or Pratitya Samutpada. About substance, Heraclitus talks about it as a fire, as a metaphor of becoming. Shunyavada as no substance, all phenomena are dependently arisen. About identity, Heraclitus talks about identity through change, same river, new waters, and Shunyavada talks about it as no enduring self, anatta, only aggregates in flux. Further, the ontology in Heraclitus is about dynamic unity of opposites. For Shunyavada, it is emptiness, non-essentialist ontology. Logic for Heraclitus is paradox and tension of opposites. For Shunyavada, two truths, conventional and ultimate, dialectic of emptiness. The goal of Heraclitus has been the wisdom through understanding of logos or reason structure, and the goal of Shunyavada is the liberation from dukkha via insights into impermanence and non-self or anatma. However, there are also certain dissectional points or key differences between the two. The role of logos versus compassion. Heraclitus introduces the logos as a rational, underlying order to the cosmos, a kind of cosmic reason that governs change. Buddhism, on the other hand, while highly rational in method, is fundamentally soteriological. It is about ending suffering, not just understanding. Theological orientation. Heraclitus borders on a pantheistic metaphysics, fire as divine, logos as cosmic law. Buddhism is non-theistic. No creator deity governs change, only causality does. Ethics and teleology. Heraclitus offers an aesthetic and intellectual embrace of change. Buddhism sees impermanence, anicca, as the source of dukkha, suffering, and seeks liberation through detachment. Selfhood and continuity. Heraclitus allows for some form of identity through flux, example river analogy. Buddhism denies identity altogether. There is no fixed self. Dawn and dusk revisited, a metaphor in both traditions. Our earlier metaphor of dawn and dusk as becoming applies beautifully. In Heraclitus, dawn and dusk are moments where opposites, light, dark, interact. Truth emerges through tension. In Buddhism, these are conditioned states, not real in themselves, but part of the causal fabric of reality. Both would agree dawn and dusk do not exist in themselves. They are relational phenomena, empty of essence but real in experience. So we see that the two visions of becoming here. Heraclitus teaches us to embrace change as the truth of being. Buddhism teaches us as the truth of becoming. Buddhism teaches us to understand change as the key to liberation from suffering. Both challenge essentialism. Both elevate paradox and impermanence, but with different aims. Where Heraclitus points to a philosophical insight into unity, Buddhism offers a practical path to liberation through understanding flux. Now our focus would be to understand Heraclitus's fire as Archė. Heraclitus's selection of fire as Archė, the most fundamental substance or principle of the cosmos, marks a pivotal movement in the pre-Socratic thought. Why did Heraclitus choose fire as Archė? Number one, dynamic nature of reality. Heraclitus viewed the cosmos as a process of continuous transformation. Fire as a constantly moving and transformative element perfectly symbolized. Flux and impermanence, change through destruction and regeneration, the cyclical nature of things. So we see that the quotation, quote from the fragment DK B30, the world order, cosmos, the same for all, no God nor man-made, but it always was and is and shall be an ever-living fire, kindling in measures and going out in measures, unquote, talks about the relevance of fire. Heraclitus saw fire as not just a physical element, but also a symbolic representation of logos, the rational structure underlying change. Fire illuminates, transforms, purifies, and destroys, symbolic of insight and rational principle. Its visibility and ephemerality reflects the paradox of being and becoming. However, Thales, as we know, had chosen water as the Archė, the life-originating passive mode. Anaximenes had chosen air, the invisible, infinite. Heraclitus chose fire that transcended both as an element visibly embodying transformation, a synthesis of visibility and invisibility, act, and potential, so we do see continuity with earlier thinkers. Now, Heraclitus of Ephesus, a pre-Socratic philosopher active around 500 BCE, has been famous and popularly known for his doctrine that everything flows, and for proposing fire as the arche, the fundamental principle or originating substance of all things. The question about why fire as the arche insightfully seeks to connect the elemental choice with the metaphor of the spark and illuminated knowledge, which means even in our day-to-day life, when we happen to compliment a bright mind, we often use metaphors like, I see the spark in you. Now, this metaphor of the spark is nothing but an extension of the fire as arche. So, spark here connotes intelligence, connotes wisdom, and the arche chosen by Heraclitus has to be the wise principle. Though fire symbolizes change, Heraclitus posits a guiding rationality, the logos, underpinning this flux. Fire then is not chaotic but structured by the logos. Thus, fire is not merely material, it is processual, rational, and dynamic, a metaphor for the underlying order of change. Further, the metaphor of the spark can be linked to the gnosis, a moment of illumination or insight, where Heraclitus is notoriously obscure, earning him the epithet the obscure or the dark, but his paradoxical style seeks to ignite understanding through tension. Quote, "The soul is dyed the color of its thoughts. Think only on those things that are in line with your principles and can bear the full light of day." Unquote. Fire in this context thus becomes, number one, cognitive ignition. The spark is the birth of an insight, an awakening of the intellect. Purification. Fire is the arche because fire purifies metals. Likewise, knowledge burns away ignorance. Illumination. Fire lights the dark, paralleling how philosophy illuminates reality. This aligns with later thinkers, Plato's allegory of the cave, for example, where the light or the sun or the fire is the source of true knowledge and the good. And if we all remember a little bit of Plato's allegory of the cave, there has been fire 24/7 burning at the threshold of the cave. And also, let's not forget about the simile of the sun. So the question is, did Plato's cavemen or did cavemen's fire fascinate Heraclitus? Speculative anthropology. While there is no direct evidence, Heraclitus was influenced by prehistoric myths of fire discovery. We can conjecturally interpret his choice of fire as symbolically loaded. Cavemen and fire. The discovery of fire marked the birth of civilization. You know, we all know fire is all about cooking, the warmth, protection, social gathering. Thus, fire is equivalent to life, culture, and cognition. The reason why Heraclitus must have picked up fire as the arche. Further, fire as Promethean. Greek myths like that of Prometheus portray fire as stolen from the gods, enabling human advancement and divine rebellion. Heraclitus' fascination for fire could have intuited the primordial centrality of fire, not just physically, but existentially and spiritually. Thus, perhaps fire appealed to Heraclitus not only because it represented change and cosmic process, but because it anchored humanity's awakening from the first spark struck on stone to the fire of thought. So fire as life, thought and cosmos, we see that Heraclitus' choice of fire as the Archė is both cosmological and epistemological. As cosmos, fire is the ever-living process of becoming. As knowledge, fire is the spark that lights understanding. As life, fire is the origin and sustainer of culture and cognition. Thus, fire is the chosen one, not arbitrarily, but because it bridges matter and mind, myth and reason, nature and culture. It is a symbol of life's paradoxes, light and destruction, stability and flux, chaos and order. Now we will try to see if the concept of fire, or does fire complete the Panchabhuta element of Indian philosophy. And if we look at the PPT here, we see that the Panchabhutas doctrine in Indian cosmology, especially Sankhya and Ayurveda, holds that the universe is composed of, in Sanskrit of course Akasha, in English is ether or space, Greek parallel not really discussed directly, Vayu, air, discussed by Anaximenes, Agni, fire, discussed by Heraclitus. Apas, which in English is water, has been picked up by Thales, the father of philosophy. Prithvi, the earth, has been taken up by Empedocles later on. So we see that Heraclitus's fire contributes to but does not complete the system of 5 elements as developed in classical Indian metaphysics. However, it aligns deeply with the central symbolic role of Agni in Vedic rituals, Agni as messenger between gods and humans, inner transformations, fire of knowledge, tapas, continuous renewal, sacrifice, cremation, digestion. Both Heraclitus and Indian thinkers associate fire with process, transmutation and divinity. Now, if we are to quickly give in bullet points about Heraclitus, whatever we have studied so far, we can look at the PPT here and we see that the aspect of time and place, Heraclitus was between 6th to 5th century BCE Ephesus. Philosophical focus, Heraclitus was all about becoming, flux, unity of opposites. Archė for Heraclitus has been fire, which is a symbol of perpetual change. The method used by Heraclitus has been aphoristic, poetic and dialectical, the reason why he is also called as the dark. The key concept, logos, which is rational cosmic law, and the legacy, of course, he had influenced Stoicism, dialectics and Hegel. Now, at this juncture, we should be taking up some quotations on fire in Heraclitus's fragment, DKB31. Quote, "The transformations of fire are, first sea, and of sea half becomes earth and half fiery wind." Unquote. This suggests a cosmic cycle, fire, sea to earth or air. All elements are transmutable, expressions of fire process. Yet another quotation, fragment DKB64, quote, "Thunderbolt steers all things," unquote, means lightning and fire are cosmic regulators, not mere accidents, but governors of reality. Further, if we check the PPT here, we see that the feature about ontological role of Heraclitus's fire and a comparison of Agni in Indian thought. Archė, foundational principle. For Indian thought, it is one of the great elements, the Panchamahabhutas. Symbolism, logos, flux, transformation. In Indian thought, it is sacrifice, knowledge, purgation. Epistemological function is about illuminator of truth. In Agni in Indian thought is about inner fire, tapas, for spiritual insight. About the ontological role, Heraclitus's fire, we see about the Archė being foundational principle, Agni in Indian thought, one of the 5 great elements, it's the Panchamahabhutas. Symbolism, logos, flux, transformation. In Indian thought, sacrifice, knowledge, purification. Epistemological function, illumination of truth. Inner fire, tapas for spiritual insight. Cosmological cycle, fire, sea, earth, fire, which is cyclical, and Agni as transmuter in the cosmic order. So we see that Heraclitus' use of fire as the ultimate principle is one of the most provocative metaphors in ancient philosophy. So to give a brief summary of what we have been discussing so far, fire thus is the ultimate concept for Heraclitus, or the Archė. For fire symbolizes change and transformation. For fire is the most dynamic of the classical elements. It consumes, transforms, and generates. For Heraclitus, this constant transformation reflects the nature of reality itself, ever changing, never static. Further, cosmic logos and fire, Heraclitus introduces the notion of logos, a rational principle, a law governing the cosmos. Fire symbolizes the visible manifestation of logos, burning away illusion, exposing the underlying order of change. This ever-living fire is not destruction but creative order. Fire as justice. Heraclitus sometimes links fire to justice, a divine balance or rhythm in the transformations of the world. In that sense, fire becomes a kind of moral principle, burning away excess and maintaining cosmic balance. So the question is, does fire resonate with let there be light? Just a hypothetical metaphysical discussion now. The very popular biblical phrase, let there be light, I think Genesis 1:3, marks the first creative act of God. It is worth nothing several parallels and tensions with Heraclitus' fire. Creation through illumination. In both traditions, Western or Eastern, light or fire is the first principle that reveals and orders the world. Fire is Heraclitus' dynamic order, light in Genesis is divine order. Both mark a cosmic beginning, a shift from chaos to cosmos. Heraclitus' fire can be read metaphorically as consciousness, the burning awareness of logos. In Genesis, light also signals the becoming of knowledge, of discernment before land, life, or even the sun. Difference in tone, Genesis emphasizes a transcendent creator commanding light into existence. Heraclitus emphasizes an immanent logos embodied in fire. No god nor man made it, it always was. Light in Genesis is an absolute good, a divine imperative. Fire in Heraclitus is ambiguous. It both destroys and creates, enacts justice and change. If we look at the PPT now, we would see regarding Heraclitus' fire and the Genesis light, the nature, ever-living, transformative principle, Genesis, fire of divine creation, role, symbol of flux, logos, cosmic justice, Genesis, separation from darkness, beginning of order, theological frame for Heraclitus, immanent, rational principle. For Genesis, it is transcendent, command of a creator. Further, function in cosmos. For Heraclitus, fire maintains balance through its change. For Genesis, light introduces clarity, direction, order. The human relation, fire is understanding of reality. Genesis, light is revelation, guidance, and life-giving. So, we see that fire for Heraclitus is not just a physical reality, but a philosophical symbol. It embodies the logic of becoming, the pulse of the universe. In saying, let there be light in Genesis, introduces a divine assertion of order, but both point to the primacy of energy, clarity and transformation as the foundations of being. So yes, Heraclitus's fire resonates to a certain extent with biblical light, though from radically different metaphysical perspectives. One is the self-burning fire of immanence and reason, the other the commanding light of transcendence and will. The concept of fire in Heraclitus thus has had deep resonance in both the West and the East. We shall be picking up more on this about the concept of fire in Heraclitus, which has deep resonance in Vedic concept of Agni, though they emerge from distinct cultural and metaphysical landscapes, and both traditions, however, elevate fire to a primordial cosmological and spiritual principle in our henceforth discussions. Thank you so much.